On February 17th, 2010, a young boy named Paul Henry Gingerich turned 12 years old. Two months later, his life was totally turned upside down and tragically changed forever by a 15-year-old older acquaintance that convinced him that he needed to help him get rid of his stepfather, the older boy's stepfather. Paul, trying to be the peacemaker, went over to that boy's house in April of that same year, thinking that he could control the situation. And talked this boy out of doing something terrible. Turns out this older boy was abused by his stepfather and couldn't take it anymore. Upon Paul's arrival, along with another friend, Paul was handed a gun and told that when this older boy's stepfather walks into the room, they're going to shoot him. When the stepfather walked into the room, the older boy stood up and fired twice, hitting and killing the man. He had ordered Paul to do the same thing. Paul closed his eyes and turned his head and pulled the trigger twice. Neither of Paul's shots were fatal to the man. The other boys were. So the older boy had killed his stepfather. In a fit of panic, they ran away. They were later caught and brought back to Indiana, to Kosciuszko County, and locked up. Now Paul was just barely 12 years old. The older boy was 15 and had been in trouble with the law before for shooting a pellet gun at a neighbor. And you would think that this man that was killed, the stepfather, when he knew that his son had been in trouble on a weapons charge before, that he would be smart enough not to keep loaded handguns around the house. So, in part, this poor dead guy is partially responsible for his own death. The older boy pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and was given 25 years in prison as an adult by Judge Rex Reed of Kosciuszko County. Paul Gingerich, 12 years old and small for his age, was also waived into adult court, with no chance for his attorneys to prepare any kind of a case for an adult. Paul was sentenced to 25 years in prison as an adult. To me, so many crimes were committed in this tragedy. I'm not condoning what these two boys ended up doing. It's wrong. I'm not condoning what the stepfather did to the older boy. That's wrong. But I am certainly not condoning what Judge Rex Reed did to Paul by sentencing him to the same number of years as the older boy. Because if you look at the facts, Paul did not fire the weapon that killed the man. Paul did not have a weapon when he went to the house. Paul had not even used a weapon before. Paul did not plan this crime. The older boy did. Paul did not have a motive. He didn't even know the guy. But yet this little boy Paul was given the same amount of time in prison as an adult as the older boy. The only calm or level-headedness from anybody in this whole situation was that the state of Indiana's Department of Corrections came right out and said they are not going to follow this judge's idiotic sentence and put Paul in an adult prison. He would not survive the night. before he was attacked and abused. So they locked him up in a high-level security youth prison in Pendleton, Indiana. All of this is so wrong, but especially this judge's crime. And as far as I'm concerned, this judge, Rex Reed, should be held responsible for child abuse. Paul does not deserve the fate that was given him. Yes, he should be punished for his part in this, but his part is small compared to other situations that older boy and that stepfather were going through at home. But why this judge took this out on this 12-year-old boy, I don't know. This has troubled me for 2 years because tomorrow, February 17th, 2012, Paul turns 14 years old. He's been in prison now for 2 years of his life. He needs to be out. He needs to be home with his family, with the people that love him. And the people that can help him get over this. There's no sense in this judge's decision to ruin as many lives as possible. And that's exactly what he's done. The state of Indiana has a big problem. They think they can take a 12-year-old boy and decide he's an adult. This happens actually all over the United States. There's 2,200 children under the age of 15 locked up in adult prisons. There's some that are even looking at the death sentence. What is wrong with this country? Over the years, since the United Nations were formed, there have been many child protection acts go before them to stop child abuse, to stop child pornography, to stop the child labor laws and slave labor laws, to stop trafficking of children for prostitution, to stop children from serving in the armies of third world countries. And every time the United States has backed these resolutions. But there's one resolution the United States won't back. And that's the decision to try a child as an adult. The United States falls in the same category as the country of Somalia when it comes to trying children as adults. So we have the great United States feels and thinks like the third world pirate country of Somalia. Think about that. Would you want your child to go before a judge in a country like Somalia? If you let them go before a judge in the United States, they're facing the same fate. I totally feel that the major crime in this whole situation right now is that Paul is still locked up, and that the county that sentenced him has been dragging their feet on presenting records to the Indiana Supreme Court that would allow Paul another hearing, thus keeping him locked up, keeping him suffering, keeping his family suffering, making his mother jump through all kinds of hoops just to get a visit with her son. Please go to Facebook and type in under search, "Support Paul Henry Gingerich," and click on the like. There's also a place on there where you can get his address at the Pendleton Correctional Facility in Indiana and write to him. He needs our support. He needs to get a new hearing. And people like Judge Rex Reed, who walk around in black robes and think they're gods over our children, had better think again. Because I would never let my child go before a judge in the state of Indiana or any other state in the United States or Somalia. Thank you for your time.